Well, depending on how these next two games go, this could be the end of the save with Sporting Lisbon and from the coach's head. We've had problems with the director of football. We've been warned that we're going to have no budget whatsoever next year, despite taking the side back to the Champions League. And unless Benfica lose and we win on the final day of the season, there will definitely be no league title, and there might not even be a cup final win if we perform as we did in the League Cup one. Yes, hello and welcome along to part 60 of the Coach's Head with me, Daniel. We are back today, desperately hoping for a miracle on the final day of the Portuguese League season. Benfica hold a 3-point advantage going into the final match. They are playing against, let me get this up, should have been prepared. They are away to Famalicão, who are in 10th place in the league. We're at home to 6th place Estoril, who are still chasing a Europa League spot rather than a Europa Conference one. And then we've got the Portuguese Cup Final against Oliveirense, a mid-table side. And if we don't end this season with a trophy, I will consider it a failure. But will we carry on after? Well, I think we have to judge that at the end of the season, because now we know we're not going to get a budget. We're going to have European football next year. And let's be honest, the fact we didn't get into the Conference League group stage, that early failure, was almost a blessing in disguise, because we would never have competed here otherwise. I am, though, prepared to complain still. I've got the Sour Grapes hoodie on, so I'm ready. If we do lose the title by a point or a goal or something, I can go on a rant and bemoan my luck, despite the fact Benfica will have won it 6 years in a row then. If you're looking forward to it, seeing if we can at least win a trophy, then please do put a thumbs up on the video. But for now, as we go through this club riddled with debt and hoping to get Champions League football to save the day, we want to try and bring a title to the club, which would be a crowning achievement that would definitely finish the save. Before we do that though, a couple of quick plugs. We had our first FM25 Save Ideas video yesterday. That's up in the eye above if you haven't seen it yet. Plenty more to follow over the next few weeks. And we've also got a link in the description to pre-order FM25. You can use my promo code at checkout for an extra 5% off. And a link to Fanatical is down there as well. For now though, let's go and have a look at the schedule, because we had a few games off camera, the two in fact since that Porto defeat, which ultimately did cost us the title. We will be top if we win and Benfica lose. Forget about the goal difference. We learned it's a head-to-head record, but that defeat against Porto is ultimately what has cost us at the minute. Or you could say not beating Benfica 2 games earlier. We have won both of our last 2 games by 3-1 though. Not the most convincing in the world, but we got the job done. Against Tondera, it was a goal for Lukowski in the first half. We then conceded just before the break, but Pedro Mendes, superstar, with a second half brace. He's almost the only player that makes me sad this isn't a long-term story for the next 5 or 6 years, because I would love to see how he developed. If I could manage him for 10 years, I think I'd have an absolute superstar on my hands. The following game, he didn't get on the score sheet, but he was still the best player on the park. 2 assists for the goals for Zacharias and Otavio before Gabriel Silva got one in the second half. And now we hope for a miracle, and mostly to avoid injuries. I've got to go strong today to make sure we win, but I do need to keep people fit for next week, because it would be a real failure if we didn't get the cup final victory when we're not playing one of the big 4. So let's go through the fixtures and see how we get on today. It is Sporting Lisbon versus Estoril. I'm not sure, by the way. I think I did show you the youth intake, but because it's been a long time, these are the 4 that haven't been signed. And I'm a bit surprised by this one, because he does look okay, but there was nothing particularly special in there. So let's get through the tactical meeting. A defensive 4-5-1 to break down for Estoril, but what a job they've done this season. Paulo Sousa has got them competing at the top, and we're going to have to look at what changes we make going into this game, because there are a few players where we can and ah about getting fitness. Do I stick with an 11 that's been winning, or do I try and get, say, a Kirkes fully fit, who's not been involved much due to injury? Do I try and keep Continella fully fit so I've got options for next week? And we've got Rivera back from a long-term injury, who's had a poor second half of the year. But he's still arguably better than Vasco Sousa, although maybe he's actually not at this point. So let me make a couple of adjustments as needed. We'll be back in a minute to run through the team. Well, I have largely decided to make those changes today. Both Continella and Kirkes come into the side. The only one I haven't brought in is Fatawu. He's been in poor form. Hervenhov, you could say the same. But the front four have been so good the last couple of matches that I just want to keep them together for the rest of the season. So, providing they stay fit, that's what's going to happen. Mendes is now rated as well as Sakarias too, so no need to change there. Means the 11 for today is Alemdar in goal, Racing and Kirkes the fullbacks with Laskowski, possibly the only permanent signing we'll see this summer, and Doyle as centre-half. Telehovsky and Continella at the midfield too, Zakarias the one ahead of them, and then it's Mendes and Otavio the wide men, with Gabriel Silva through the middle up front. He's past 20 for the season now, let's hope he can push on again, because if we win this game and Benfica lose, there is going to be a surprise title lift for us. Let's hope we can pull it off. I'm not sure though, we're going to get a favour down the road. Well, it's only one change for Estoril, and it's another familiar name. We mentioned the manager, Paulo Sousa, but the defender coming in is Ernad Puklin, a man we managed a couple of years ago at Dinamo Zagreb. João Marquez, a standout man in the middle. They're a good side, but they've been based on a solid defence rather than goals galore. So let's tell the lads to carry on where they left off. Just find a way to win, because the last thing we want is Benfica to slip up and us to not have taken advantage. If we get later on and Benfica are 2 or 3 up, then we'll start resting people for the cup final. But for now, I want to try and get the job done. And we've got an early corner with Pedro Mendes up to the back stick. The keeper does really well there. And Wusu picks it up. And Estoril, this is maybe where they're a threat on the break. They don't often dominate games, but Reyes on the left-hand side is trying to get down there, and there's no one really back. Pedro Mendes was still making his way over from the corner on the other side. No one was really covering him, and it means they've got a chance to cross here. Kasama gets it into the back post. Keeper comes. In the end, Alemdar does pretty well. We get away with that, but it wasn't the most convincing bit of work. As he goes long downfield, big ball towards Silva, who loses out in the air, but Telehovsky, in that playmaker role today, has time to bring it down. Finds Otavio out wide. There's 3 in the middle. Ball towards Gabriel Silva. 22 for the year. I do kind of wonder what if. It could have been a very different looking season, because if he'd been fit for those Forest ties, as in fully match fit and flying, it could have been a very odd season, couldn't it? In Europe, trying to compete with a smaller squad, but also with the genuine chance of winning that competition. There is some big news down the road at Benfica, though, because they're 0-0 away from home, but Ribeiro, their star striker, has gone off injured, and he's the man that saved them in the cup final against us. And with us doing our job for now, it only takes 1 goal, and we might do the unthinkable. As Otavio crosses towards Pedro Mendes, we're trying to make it 2, and that would make me a bit more comfortable here. We have thrown away a few leads this season, haven't we? Some costly ones as well. We just avoided one of them. We would have been in a good position now. As Doyle plays into Continella in the centre circle. Laskowski keeping it. Looking forward to seeing him here permanently next year. New manager may benefit from that if we're not here any longer. As Pedro Mendes, lovely ball outside of the foot. Otavio, same again. Silva puts it away. I initially thought just offside, but the left back, according to the linesman, was playing him on. So let's hope that that goal is given. As we're 10 minutes to the break, a 2-0 lead would allow us to relax a bit and focus entirely down the road. It is 0-0 there. As it stands, we're missing out by a point. 1 goal for the home team and we're champions. That's all it takes. As Zakarias loses out, the last thing we can do is get sloppy though. Doyle playing into midfield. Wide to Kirkes, who's had a solid half on his return. He's had a couple of sub appearances, but this is his first start back. The Silva goes back to Laskowski. Wide to the right to Abdurrahman Racing. And down the line is Pedro Mendes. We know the quality he's got, but he avoids him. He goes wide. And Continella's inside of him. 3-0. Deflection for an own goal. Seems a bit harsh on Continella. I think that was on target. But I don't really care how they go at the minute. We have definitively done our job. And at half-time, the pressure is on Benfica. We're 3-0 up with 2 shots on target, which tells you what you need to know about this game. Are they going to succumb to the pressure? They'll know we're 3 up at the break. And it's now how they react to that. As Telehovsky goes back to Laskowski. Into Telehovsky again and a Racing. We will start looking at subs just after the hour mark. Resting some key players like Telehovsky for next week. Probably Mendes on the right as well, who's done so well. As Laskowski brings the ball over halfway. Has support from a Racing. You can see we're not in a rush. We're trying to entice them in. And then hit behind them quickly as a Racing finds Pedro Mendes. Good early cross towards Gabriel Silva. Headed away by Puklin, our former player. But Otavio on the volley, just wide. And here's bad news. In the other game, Benfica have taken a lead and it's the most experienced man Probably the man who came on for Ribeiro, Julian Alvarez, the former City man, has scored it. And that might be the goal that cost us the title. For us, we're doing our job in style. As Otavio's shot is blocked, it should have been 4. Telehovsky has the chance to play wide. Mendes cutting in from the left. Can he get a goal? Off the post and behind for a corner. Be lovely to get him a goal before he comes off, but I don't think it's going to happen. And unfortunately, I don't think the title is either. It's been some effort though. For a side that's been in the top 2 once since it last won the league in 2020. To have them back here competing on the final day, yes, because of no Europe and that failure, is a real effort for us. But it looks like we're going to fall just short. We are going to stop and look for changes with 25 to go. Kirkes, it's a good build of fitness for him, but Volken will come on. Telehovsky does not need to be risked in the slightest, and because Redondo's fully fit, I want to give a final league appearance to Braganca. He's out of contract at the end of the year. He's the record appearance holder in the league for the club. Let's give him his 395th for Sporting Lisbon. We're going to take Zacharias off for Fatawu. And we're going to take Mendes off for Hervenhov. Tempted to even do Otavio, to be honest, who's so crucial to us now. But no, I'm going to do Mendes instead. We'll go Hervenhov for him. Silva number 10, Fatawu to the right. Let's get this right eventually. There we go. And if Hervenhov could end the goal drought today before the cup final, that would be spectacular. You can see from the right of the screen that Benfica have just got a second. It's officially over, our push for the title. And it may have been the chance without Europe, with a transfer budget before it's gone in the summer with the massive debts. I feel like this was the opportunity. Unfortunately, it's gone. John Hervenhoff, where's your luck? Hits the post. He just cannot score since he's come back from injury. 20 to go, it stays 3-0. And that is such a shame because if he'd have got that goal, it would have made me so confident for next week. As it is now, we're going to be relying on the 11 because there's nothing on the bench that can score. It's been a really good effort this season. And yes, we've taken a club back to competing near the top, but ultimately, we've not done enough. And that's where the disappointment is. We have got one change remaining. So, again, I feel like maybe a final appearance to Gabbia. He's played 222 for the club. He deserves his chance as well. Although, actually, he's got one more year on his deal. So, we'll leave that and we'll take a racing off for Vollerson at right back. We'll do that for the final few minutes of the game. A 3-0 victory here is going to be comfortable. Benfica, though, have done their job away from home. And as suspected, that defeat against Porto has proved to be pretty costly. We finished in second place, just 3 points off the top. A really good effort to get back amongst the elite, to finish above Braga and Porto, something the club hasn't done for a while. And we are now, I think, going to look ahead to the final. Just hope we haven't got any injuries, which it doesn't look like we have. Paulo Sousa not happy with his performance. Oliveirense are the side we've got to watch out for next week. And Benfica are crowned champions. A 2-0 victory for them. A week to go until the final. We'll be back in a minute for it. Hopefully, a chance to win silverware in the final game of the year. We're back for the Portuguese Cup Final. The first game in one of these deciders that we're expected to come out on top of. We didn't expect to win the title. We didn't expect to beat Benfica in the League Cup Final, albeit we were close. But this game we've got to win. We've got to have a trophy to show for this season. John Hervenhoff, we worried about his form. Well, now we can worry about his fitness too. We've given him a course of painkilling injections for the Cup Final. It's not something I often do. But come on, it's the Cup Final. It's the final game of the season. Ian and the risk of being in the Denmark squad, I don't think. He's not scored for them either. So let's just get him in and see how he does on the bench. Oliveirense are the opponents. They've got a good team, but it's not as good as ours. We should be winning this one. So let's go and get through to team selection, where we've got a couple of big decisions to make. Chief among which is who is going to start at left back and which other 3 players will go onto the bench. So Rivera should be one of them. Asnu and probably Sano will be the 3 that we add to the substitutions. The question is, though, what do we do in terms of left back? Kirkes has been good all season, but Volken's the fitter player, so I'm going to go for him at left back. And then in midfield, Continella or Redondo, I've got to go for the tried and trusted combo in this one. So Telehovsky back to his preferred role, Redondo in for Continella, and Volken back in fully fit at left back. But the front 4 stays the same. Fatawu makes do with a place on the bench. He didn't do anything particularly spectacular in that cameo last week. So now I'm going to trust this 11 to get me over the line in the Portuguese Cup Final. Make it a 3rd successive club we've won a trophy at. Well, here we go. It is 4 changes for our hosts, who obviously made a couple last week to keep people fit. Nascimento is the man to watch out for in the middle. Him and Almeida, probably their best 2 players. So let's just see how we get on in this one. Surely we can't throw it away. Prove a point, boys. We've got most of them motivated or inspired. The cup final is a chance for you to show how good you are. It's a big capacity crowd. It's a really big game. And I desperately want a trophy. We've missed out by 1 game in 2 of them. We've played in every domestic match this season, and I want to make it count for something. We've got to have something to show at the end of this. So let's see if we can do well and start quickly in the first half. 37,000 in, 5 minutes gone, and it's starting to look like one of my normal cup finals here. No shots for either side, a very boring start to the game. Oh, this is like the olden days, isn't it? We sort of changed it a bit at Southend this year. We've not been quite as boring in those big matches. But this is starting to take the vibe of the older games. Come on, boys. Bit of encouragement. Still trying to get out of the habit of using those touchline shouts. But look at this for a first half. Genuinely dismal game of football. And maybe suggest that we've not got players for the big game again. Is that what the director of football has done wrong here? Because it's Doyle, one of his signings, who's looking unhappy. Otavio's not great there either. Maybe Fatawu will be needed off the bench. As playing out from the back, we've nicked it off them. Redondo loses it though. Vulcan wins it back. Otavio down the line. Zacharias in behind. Across to Gabriel Silva. And in off the underside of the bar. I thought he'd missed it for a minute. But he's delivered again. When he's fully fit, he's the star. It's been a terrible half of football, but we nicked the ball in their half once. And that high press has worked because we get the goal from 1 shot on target. It's been an awful cup final, but the fans won't care. If there's a trophy at the end of it, I'm pretty sure they'll be happy. We've got Callum Doyle back on board, so let's get into the second half. We'll give it 15 minutes before changes as Redondo down the right to Pedro Mendes, the teenager, across to Silva again. And Pedro Mendes, that's a good sign. He's delivering on the biggest stages at the youngest of ages. He's only 18. He's had goals and assists galore this season, particularly assists. And he's delivering it yet again in the biggest game of the season for us. What a start for him. What a start to his career. Hopefully he'll keep doing well next year. We're 2-0 up. They are the only 2 shots on target and highlights of this game. But what's going to happen now? Because there's a third one. Silva getting the ball as they're trying to play out from the back again. To be honest, they're sort of playing into our hands, which is great. But we've got to make sure we don't let them through like this. Doyle does well. He finds Laskowski. If we can get a third, I think we can start to celebrate, even with our history. Lovely touch by Gabriel Silva. Second one's not so good, but it falls for Otavio. In he goes. What an effort that is. And what an effort in the bad way, because he has dragged that from the edge of the 6-yard box almost to the corner flag. I genuinely don't know how he's missed by that much. So he's going to be one of 3 changes now. Vulcan's on a booking, but Kirkes would be first choice, so he comes on. The same sub that we rotated at the start of the game. Continella on for Redondo. He switches sides with Telehovsky. And Otavio off for Abdul Fatawu. 2 changes remaining. 25 to go. We're 2-0 up. And I think we're going to have a trophy. They've not even had a shot today. So if they find a way to win from here, I think I'd have to be mortified, wouldn't I? We will try and get Braganca on for the last 5 minutes as well. You can see Zacharias is struggling in that number 10 position. We'll make a decision on him in a moment. As Laskowski, back to a racing, and now Continella. Can we get that third? Then we'll make a bit more of a sentimental change. Zacharias to Continella. Might be his final contribution. Gives it to Mendes. And this time it's over the bar. The offside flag was up anyway. So his blushes are spared. I've talked him up all game. Didn't do too great there. Let's get Braganca on. We're going to put him on for Zacharias. And because we're 2-0 up in the cup final, I'm going to go to a bit more of a steady shape. We're going to put him in a holding role there. Telehovsky. Which one's better as just the bog standard centre mid? I think it's probably Continella of the 2. No, it's not. It is Telehovsky. So we're going to just drop him back a little bit and almost put him as a centre mid on support. Even on automatic, he can just chase the game then. We've got 1 more remaining. Do I give Rivera a sentimental minute? I don't think I do just yet. So I'm going to wait a few more. Then we'll make the last one in stoppage time. Well, there's 4 minutes added on. They've not had a shot. Surely from here, we're going to be absolutely fine. Mendes has been one of the stars of the season. I want him to get this send-off in the final. So I am going to give that moment to Rivera. We'll switch Fatawu over. and he'll get stoppage time on his comeback from injury. Because despite the fact he was poor just before his injury, he had a decent first half of the year. He'd been a good part of the side. And it's a side that has got a trophy. We had to watch Benfica walk up in the League Cup final. We had to watch on as they lifted the league title after a final day of the season victory. But now we get one. The Portuguese Cup is won by Sporting Lisbon. A trophy and back in the Champions League. I think you can say we've done our job here. 2-0 is the victory. We never looked under threat. We weren't great going forward, but at the back, we were rock solid. And it's going to have to stay that way because there's no transfer budget for next season. This club is in massive debt. And while we may have missed out on our opportunity for the big one, ultimately, from where we took over, this season is a massive success, despite the fact we missed out on European football in the group stages. What a win that is. We've got a trophy, third club in a row. And I can celebrate the fact that we've got a bit of positivity back at Sporting Lisbon. And now with Champions League football, financially next year, if they can get through it, they should be all right. Let's go and have a quick look at the season review and then decide what we're going to do. Well, it's not the official end of season review, but we have got all the end of season messages. Firstly, though, I want to show a bit of an insight as to why this club may be in some debt and what happens when your director of football is in charge of contracts. Because for winning the Portuguese Cup, we have received 286 grand plus 16 grand for playing in it. So 300 grand, give or take. The bonuses that he's agreed to pay out in a contract, 190 grand for the squad anyway. And then individually, we've got contracts equating to over £1 million. So the fact that he's giving out 1.5 million for something we're getting 300 grand for maybe explains why this club is struggling financially and why the long term is going to be difficult. The club want to play attacking football, develop youth players, get back to the Champions League. We've done all of that. We've done that with aplomb. But now the expectation is being a top three. And this is the key one that's putting me off. Sell players before buying. And it's not just the fact you've got to sell before you buy. If we go and have a look at the finances screen, we only get 55% of what we sell. And then it drops to 30% if we make a big sale or two big sales. So we're not going to get a lot here. This is going to be quite a difficult summer. We have dropped below the committed wage spend because obviously a few big earners are going off the books. But I don't know if it accounts for Lukowski, who's signing a permanent deal. But overall, it's been a really good season. We've done so well. We're losing a few of the big hitters off the squad hierarchy. And the board obviously expect more next year, but with no budget whatsoever. And that, for me, is going to be the grave concern. So I think here's what I'm going to do, because I'm a little bit undecided at the minute. You can see that a lot of the squad is coming to or over the age of 30. Some of them coming towards the end completely. But ultimately, not a lot of those older players are wanted. So I'm going to go through the summer. I'm going to do the Carlos Corb run at Huddersfield from a couple of years ago. I'm going to go through the summer. We're going to come back for pre-season. We're going to see which players are sold and signed. And if a week before the season I'm not happy, we're going to walk. I think that's the right thing to do because I want to know if we can be given a competitive squad. We've seen a director of football work well under restriction at Willem II at the first club of this save. That was brilliant fun. But if he can't give me competitiveness, if he can't give me improvements for Champions League football, we can't compete with this squad for a league title and for the Champions League. So that's how we're going to leave it. Let me know if you think that's the right decision. If it is, we'll find out in the next episode, of course. Let me know how many you think will come in, whether you think the director of football works in magic, or am I going to be left disappointed, not for the first time by a director of football this year, and forced to resign and then the save. We're going to go out on a high regardless, though, because we're either going to have another good season or we've got a Portuguese Cup final to look back at and a trophy to stare at in the cabinet. If you enjoyed it, despite missing out on the league title, then please do put a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe and turn that notification bell on to find out what our director of football does this summer and what our decision is in the next episode as a result. That will be live back on the channel in a couple of days' time. Let me finish on this screen so you can see the winner of that competition and the failure there, which ended up being a great thing for our season. Between now and then, though, we're back for the final farewell tour with Southend United. It's our final season. We're pushing to win trophies, having sealed that Carabao Cup at last. You can find that series up in the eye above. We will be back tomorrow with that one. And don't forget, you can pre-order FM25 via the link in the description and check out the football podcast in the eye above too. Thank you for watching and supporting the show. I do appreciate it as always. I'll see you back here in a couple of days' time with Sporting Lisbon to find out whether or not we've been given a squad to compete, and as a result, whether this save will continue or not.